I want to welcome everybody to our educational forum on the citizen ballot amendment process. And across Alabama, across the United States, there are 26 states that are empowering their citizens with a powerful democratic tool, which is the citizen initiative process. And in those states, everyday people, not just legislators, can gather signatures, place measures on the ballot, and propose new laws, amend state constitutions, and even repeal bad laws. It's direct democracy in action. Unfortunately, Alabama citizens do not have that power. And in our state, the only way to amend the Constitution or place statewide measures on the ballot is through the legislature. And that means when lawmakers refuse to act, the people have no direct path forward, no matter how strong public support is. And this year we have the opportunity to correct that by passing HB 14, which would place an amendment on the ballot for the people of Alabama to vote on whether to allow Alabama voters, not just the legislature, to propose and pass laws or constitutional amendments through the citizen initiative process. Tonight, our panelists, I want to introduce our panelist, and first I'll introduce Sam Duff, ACLU Alabama Voting Rights Policy Strategist, and he's going to really help us focus in on HB 14. We also are joined by voting rights leaders from 3 other states. Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Ohio, Jenn Miller, David Couch, Arkansas attorney and public policy advocate, and Cecile Scoon, immediate past co-president of the League of Women Voters of Florida and civil rights attorney. And so I'm gonna kick this off and ask our out-of-state friends to just talk to us about what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in advancing citizen ballot initiatives in your state, and what do you wish you'd known just before you started? And I'm going to first turn this over to Jenn.
Thank you so much for having me. I have to tell you that I have a soft spot in my heart for Alabama and the Alabama League, so I'm glad to be here with you. So the ballot initiative process here in Ohio has been around since 1912, and actually Teddy Roosevelt came to the state capitol to support the ballot initiative process. It was considered a way of allowing citizens to fight corruption and hold people accountable. Ballot initiatives pass just a little over half of the time here in Ohio. But it's very hard to get on the ballot, first off. It takes a lot of signatures from a lot of counties. And then after that, you have to get on the ballot and run a strong campaign. They tend to be very expensive. And Ohio voters tend to vote no if they don't understand or if there's a lot of dis or misinformation. So nothing about the process is easy, but I will say that over the years, we have used the process to really improve the lives of everyday Ohioans. So voters have used ballot initiatives to approve pensions for war veterans, to fund school construction, to set standards for civil servants, to raise the minimum wage, provide housing assistance, fund conservation, integrate the Ohio National Guard with both people of color and women, and invest in a wide range of infrastructure projects. And so it's a very, very important tool for us, even if it's a very challenging tool. And I look forward to talking about the ways we've had to defend it, because I think that the ways we've had to defend it might actually help you as you think about communicating to voters about why it's needed.
Thank you, Jenn. I'm going to hand it off to David to talk about Arkansas.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me. It's nice to be with fellow Southerners. Sorry, Ohio. Arkansas and Florida, I don't count Florida as a Southern state, is the only Southern state that really has the initiative and referendum process. We got it in 1910. We didn't have Teddy Roosevelt, but we had Williams Jennings Bryan came to Arkansas. It was referred from our General Assembly as a proposed constitutional amendment. They came, they did a train stop whistle tour all across the state, and we passed it in 1910. And it's been pretty much pristine from 1910 until like 2012. We have a constitutional amendment, we have initiated acts, and we actually have the referendum. And it requires 10% of the people who voted for governor in the last election to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot. And in Arkansas, that's 90,704 for this time. It takes 8% to get an initiated act on the ballot. And then it takes 6% to do a referendum, and you only have like 90 days to collect your signatures. And so we've done really well with it. We've used it to raise the minimum wage twice. We've did medical marijuana. We would have had an independent redistricting commission and ranked choice voting, but our Supreme Court took it off the ballot. So our biggest impediment has not been the actual law itself. It's been the General Assembly and their passing laws to really make the process much more difficult, much more cumbersome, and they set up lots of little traps in it that if you miss a trap, then all your signatures are thrown out and you don't get to qualify for the ballot. Or or we have a ballot title process. You have to do that at the beginning of the process. We've got a referendum now that we're trying to pass that's going to move that to the end, because our Supreme Court, even after you collect signatures, can say, well, your ballot title is not a fair and accurate summary of your measure, so we're not going to let people vote on it. So our biggest impediments have been the General Assembly and the courts now. I mean, it really started, like I said, when Arkansas was the last southern state to go from blue to red. We're going to be the first to go back red to blue. I know this is nonpartisan, but I'm telling you. And it's going to be direct democracy that does it. And so we have filed lawsuits. The League of Women Voters is the lead plaintiff. The federal courts in Arkansas have declared a lot of the laws that they pass as unconstitutional. We filed one in state court. They declared laws unconstitutional in that. So the thing I would tell you to do is to make sure when you do your ballot that it's make sure that you make it a fundamental right and subject to strict scrutiny, because that's what our measure does this time around. I think that's the law anyhow, but we're making it do. But other than that, it's been easy. The interference is the General Assembly. The courts actually have helped us out because this is free speech. It's not something that's a little different. Like if it's voting rights, the ACE are going to throw it out. But with free speech, they seem to be good. So I'd love to help y'all do whatever you need to do. This is the best thing in the world. It's how we keep our General Assembly in check. And every law that we have passed since 2012 through the initiative process would never have made it through our General Assembly. Not at all. Zero chance.
Thank you, David. We'll dig in some more on some examples later on in the conversation. Cecile, I guess I'd love for you to talk to us about Florida and your process and some of the challenges. Although we will get into more of the detailed challenges later. But
yes, thank you. Like some of the other speakers, our Citizens Initiative is a way around the legislators not listening to the voice of the people. And I've been involved with the League of Women Voters for the last 10 years on a state level and often in the state capitol. And the room will be full of everybody, different people from around the state testifying against or for the legislation. And there'll be one person or two that is going against the tide. And the legislators will act as if the people hadn't spoken. And that has frustrated the citizens. So we've used our Citizens Initiative process to get around the can't hear you situation that the legislators have put forth. We have a strenuous system to make it happen. First, you have to get enough signatures to even have it be reviewed by our state Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court reviews it to determine, is it on one topic and is it clear? Because if it's on multiple topics, then which one are you voting for? And they want to make sure that the citizens are not confused or misled in any way. So you have to have, and generally speaking, it's percentages of the people that voted in the election before, and it's a little bit less than 1 million people to get it to pass. And it's like 80,000 petitions need to be signed to get to the Supreme Court review. Once the Supreme Court reviews it and you pass that singularity test and clarity test, then you have a run to try to get a certain amount to actually get it on the ballot. And then once it's on the ballot, then you have to, it used to be 50%. It has been raised by the legislator to 60%. So we also echo what I believe David was saying. The legislators, once they realized, hey, the citizens are getting around us, they have been on a tear the last 15 or so years to make it more difficult. The first thing they did was raise the passage rate from 50 to 60%. And that's really our biggest hindrance right there. You said, what is the biggest challenge? That is the biggest challenge, because you can get really close to over the majority and still, if it's just below 60, it doesn't pass. And that's how we got our Amendment 4, restoration of voting rights of persons with felony convictions who completed their sentences. That's how we got that done. It was 64%. But we had a recent proposal that just failed by less than 2%. And we'll go into that. That was the second Amendment 4, and that was for women to have the right to an abortion. So there were a lot of things and tricks and things that they did against that particular proposed amendment. And right now they have additional legislation that is making it more difficult. And if you don't follow the rules, that could be a third-degree felony. So they have fines, they have potential felonies, and they're doing everything they can to make it more difficult and scare people off. And I can share more detail about that later.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing about your states. And now, Sam, can you talk about HB 14 and if it passes the legislature and it gets voted into law by the citizens as a ballot initiative, what would it look like for Alabama?
Yeah, no problem, Kathy, and blessed to be here with all of you on the call this evening. So essentially, HB 14, it is actually very similar to what's going on in Arkansas. So shout out to you, David. So the bill itself, it essentially allows, again, direct democracy to be up on the ballot. For folks, if the bill was to pass in its current state, folks would actually have to get at least 1,000 signatures in order for folks to be able to have that specific issue to be presented upon the ballot. And if they are able to get that, if they are successful, there's actually $1,000 filing fee. But if they're successful, they get their $1,000 back, which is actually pretty good if you are able to see it all the way through. The ballot initiative itself, it's being called the Alabama We the People Act. The sponsor is Rep. Marilyn Lands, and she also has some co-sponsors with Rep. Philip Insler and Rep. Adeline Clark. So the bill itself, again, it presents folks with the opportunity to put specific issues that are pertinent and important to them up on the ballot. And going back to what's going on over there in Arkansas, similarly, there's going to be at least 10%. If you're looking for a constitutional amendment, you have to have at least 10% of those gubernatorial votes. And I'm looking at my notes here. If the legislature doesn't pass a law or doesn't pass it within 30 days, the proposal automatically goes to the ballot itself. The bill itself is actually a really good bill. Here's the reason why we're talking about it tonight, because the voice of the people shall always be heard, and this is a way to allow that to happen. I know a lot of times the legislature can kind of drown out a lot of the voices that aren't friendly to their initiative, to what they believe should be the focus. So again, and to Miss Cecilia's point here, it brings it all back together. It's a way to allow the people's voices to be heard. I would say, as far as safeguards, I think that is something that is still really being developed within the bill itself. But that's comes along with any bill, because every bill that's passed through the legislature comes with some sort of risk. And I think that when you go into the bill itself, I think that's where politics, which is really the art of the compromise, really comes into play, because it allows you to see the issues and things that one person or one party, one entity may miss. And you can be able to bring that together in order to alleviate and mitigate a lot of those issues that really come into play here. So you're still working on some of the safeguards within the bill, but that's why it's so important, I would say, as a lobbyist, that the people within the state really get involved. You have to be involved and engaged in this process so your voice can be heard and so that it can echo within that state house. And especially here within Alabama, since it is so dominated by partisan politics, you have to apply that public pressure, because that's the only way in which you would really be able to get legislators to move. So I really want to stress that. I really want to stress these specific points when it comes to ballot initiative, because if you are not thoroughly engaged in it, you're not going to get these legislators to move. So that's why it is so imperative that we have other folks within the community to really voice their concerns about bills and legislation that you really feel strongly about. I know I went a little left here, but it all comes together. And I must thoroughly stress that, because your voice is so important and you have to be heard within that state house. So, Kathy, I was able to answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back to our other three states, really to help us understand the challenges, because, and I always like my Marvel movies, because I say with great authority comes great power comes great responsibility. And I think we need to understand what's been going on in these other states as far as what has been going on as far as the government trying to restrict or complicate citizen ballot initiatives. Maybe not government, maybe other organizations. And when you've been able to get citizen ballot initiatives, what are some of these complications that you've seen used successfully in your state? And I'm going to go first to David and to talk to Arkansas, and then we'll go back around to everybody.
Yeah, Samuel, I wish I could just copy our process, because our process as it exists in the Constitution is really good. We have an initiative that the League of Women Voters is my client. I'm on the board of the league in Arkansas. So we have an initiative that we're going in to change our original constitutional amendment to make it a little bit more tight, make it where the General Assembly can't interfere with it so much. But in Arkansas, like I said, we're a pretty small state. It takes 90,000 registered voters to get on the ballot. We have 75 counties. The geographic diversity, I have to get a certain number of signatures, half of the designated percentage, from 15 counties. The General Assembly changed it to 50, but our circuit court in Pulaski County a couple of weeks ago said you can't change the Constitution with a statute, novel concept. And so they struck that down. So it's really easy. The hardest part is, I think, eliminating the risk that you get thrown off of the ballot for a mistake. Like I said, our General Assembly has really overly regulated the signature collection process, especially with respect to paid canvassers. And they set up all these rules that a sponsor or a canvasser or a notary or something can miss. And you don't it's not like you lose 10 signatures or 10, you lose bulk. You'll lose 10, 20,000 signatures because of these mistakes, because that's how they're designed. So those are the laws, some of the laws that the federal court has ruled to be unconstitutional. So the signature collection process is where they really tinker with it, because they try to find ways, little landmines to put in there that if you miss it, you don't get on the ballot. The second thing is our ballot title process is a little different than everybody else. As it exists now, we submit our ballot title to the Attorney General, and he approves it or not approves it. And so you have to go back and forth till you get a ballot title. But it means nothing because people still have the ability to challenge it after you collect your signatures to say the ballot title is bad. So the amendment that we have now puts that process at the front. So it allows the Attorney General to write the ballot title. It allows for publication of it, and then a window for people to challenge it. And then if they don't challenge within that window, then they can never challenge it again. So the ballot title process is and the signature collection process, I think, are the areas that you need to really watch, because like they really try to put just impediments in there to take off the measures. But other than that, we don't have many problems collecting signatures. The 3 laws the General Assembly passed this time is, our ballot titles can be a page or 2 pages long. They passed a law that said you had to read the entire ballot title to the person signing the petition before they sign it, and then you had to inform the person that hey, it's a crime to be petition fraud, whatever that means. You had to tell them that out loud, and then they limited the number of people. They limited non-residents canvassers. Make sure that you protect out-of-state canvassers to come in. Arkansas, we can only use Arkansans right now. But our courts held those laws to be unconstitutional. So I would just put as much as you can in the law about the process to protect the signature collection, the ballot title process, because, we are allegedly a red state, kind of like Alabama is allegedly a red state. But, we had minimum wage on the ballot in 2018 is the last time we did that. We did it in 2014 and 2018, and we bumped it 70%. We passed medical marijuana passed at like 65%. We had casinos passed at 60%, so we're not, the people of Arkansas are probably like the people of Alabama and the people of Mississippi and the rest of the southern state, just good folks. And this is just gives them the voice they don't have. I mean, they get to make their own law. They get to write their own law. They get to campaign for their own law. They get to vote for their own law. I mean, this is the people's voice. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Cecile, can you talk about the challenges from Florida? And
Yes, in fact, and I mentioned earlier raising the threshold from 50% to 60%, and that's been a big issue. With regards to our recent elections where the abortion right just failed, there have been allegations that the governor, who was against the abortion, right to an abortion, took funds. The government's not supposed to take a side, but he took funds from one part of the government and actually created what many proponents of the right to an abortion said was untrue, and commercials that said it would interfere with parental consent. And the actual amendment itself says in the body at the top, this will not change parental consent rights. So we had a lot of upset in the state of Florida about the misstatement and then the use of the funds. So it's a situation where it can be very difficult to defend if opponents and proponents want to mix it up, and it was so close. And it was passing by a good mark, according to all the polls. And then with that last bit of publicity, I guess, that we said was false, and the league supported the right to an abortion too. But anyway, that was one of the headwinds that we ran into. And that's just subject to whatever is the leadership wants to do. It's something that you don't see very often. Right now, we're also in litigation, and I was testified in federal court 2 weeks ago against the latest bill, Senate Bill 1205, which is the one that says that it treats volunteer petition gatherers like the league as if we were paid circulators. Because there have been some instances in the past, not that frequent, but it does happen, where when people are being paid by petition, there's a financial incentive for them to write in names that they don't know and things like that. So the league was always exempted from those kinds of limitations and guidelines and registration requirements, simply because we had no incentive. to turn in false. And it's not who we are, and most other volunteer groups are not. But this last time, they put us in the loop, and it then made the registration requirements much more difficult. You had to put your name and home address and last four of your social in a form that was a public document with the state. The league, all league members had to do it if you wanted to collect more than 25 petitions. And then you also had to sign each petition you collected saying that that you were doing everything properly. They also excluded non-residents who would sometimes come and help, and non-citizens. And that has been litigated strongly. So in Florida, where we have a lot of communities that have English as their second language, and they've naturalized citizens, we often would utilize people who were not citizens to help communicate, whether they be Haitian or Hispanic background. Very, very helpful to have people who are comfortable with the language and the customs to work with league members and other volunteers to communicate and be welcome. So that's something that they've done intentionally to basically not let all Americans vote. We're not bringing in non-Americans, but if you can't communicate with a new American in a language and culture that they're comfortable with, you're essentially blocking out a good percentage of our new citizens. So those are some of the things that we're very upset about, sort of the same attack on the SAVE Act, that kind of thing. Just like we only want certain people to vote, we only want certain people to gather petitions, and we only want petitions signed by certain people, because by closing those avenues, that's the impact.
And you've been challenging that in court?
Yes, we just testified against it in our litigation. We went up with right to clean water, which was impacted by these new laws. The Medicaid expansion was impacted, and marijuana use. We had 4 plaintiffs, and we were all against these new limitations.
Okay. Thank you, Cecile. Jenn, I'm going to hand it off to you now to talk about what are some of the things you've been seeing in Ohio.
And I realize I didn't answer one of your first parts of the question, which is what it takes. I should have answered a little bit more about that. So we do have, in 1912, we did get 3 kinds of ballot initiatives. We got the referendums. We only have 90 days, and there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen there. So the only successful one in my recent history that I can think of was almost 20 years ago, where they tried to gut public sector unions, and that law from the legislature was overturned. Referendums are rarely successful. We have initiated statute, which is where you pass a law. The problem with that is you need almost the same amount of signatures, and the legislature can just overturn or change it willy-nilly. And so almost all of our ballot issues are constitutional amendments. Here in Ohio, and this is probably in part because we're just such a populated state, but you need about 425,000 valid signatures, and you have thresholds in at least half of the 88 counties. But because there's so many signature rules, most campaigns are looking to get double that. So 900,000 valid signatures, because they're going to get thrown out for all kinds of reasons, and try to get in meet the threshold and far more than those 44 counties. So it's a lot of work. The first thing we have to do is have 1,000 that we present to the Attorney General. And with that is the summary that you propose that kind of talks about your entire amendment, that obviously could be many pages. That summary has to be approved by the Attorney General as being fair and truthful. For our Citizens Not Politicians amendment, which would have had an independent redistricting commission, we had to do that 4 times. And so 4 different times we had to get that initial 1,000. Then we had to go through the signature process. And as I said, we had more than 1 million signatures, but we were able to make the ballot. But then the next thing is that the ballot board, which is made up of politicians, and can then write the language that the voters see on the ballot. And that's supposed to be fair and truthful. This time for citizens, not politicians, in 2024, they actually they baked disinformation into the language that voters would see. It actually said it would require partisan gerrymandering when in fact it would have ended it. Another thing that they tried to do, that came into effect during our Citizens Not Politicians round, was they passed a foreign money ban, which we all know that foreign money is already banned. But what happened is they required, they said that we could only get, and this is only for ballot initiatives, not for candidate campaigns, money from citizens. So you could not get money from legal residents. So for example, if we could very likely have, for example, a visiting scholar at Ohio State who becomes a dues-paying member. We couldn't use any of our general coffers. We had to start fundraising entirely over, get a brand new bank account, and require every donor to attest that they were a citizen before we could use any of those funds. And the AG has unlimited power to investigate those who are working for or against ballot initiatives. So all of this is significant. And then, of course, there is the disinformation, as we already talked about, that where the opposition actually weaponized the state and used the state mechanisms to say that our amendment would require gerrymandering. We also saw when the Choice Amendment passed that, of course, this was not in the ballot, like what voters would see on their ballot, but the entire disinformation campaign against it had all kinds of lies in there, again, about parental rights, those kinds of things. And there's no accountability for that false advertising. The one thing that happened in 2023, and it was actually inspired by Florida, when they tried to make ballot initiatives harder by actually making the signature process even harder, and by making ballot initiatives have to pass by 60%. And that was because, and when they were shopping this amendment and trying to get sponsors in the legislature, the lawmakers said there were two reasons: the reproductive choice amendment and redistricting. We were able to defeat that. We went to every small community newspaper, TV outlet, and radio that we could. And we talked about how this was the power of the people and how politicians were trying to take over that power. And because it would have taken a constitutional amendment to change the constitutional amendment process, that ended up having to go to voters. And we did, in fact, defeat that. Thank goodness. So we defeated that part. It still has to just be passed by a simple majority. But the bottom line is the signature process alone, from going through the AG to all the signatures that you need. They are trying to do more things, they are trying to pass more laws that when it intimidate volunteer signature gatherers, and we're fighting that now. But the signature process alone, less than a third of our ballot campaigns actually even make it to the ballot. Something like Citizens Not Politicians that we worked on had very, very, very high polling. And we had way over the number of signatures we needed. We were very well funded in-state by in-state folks, thousands and thousands of volunteers, businesses, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, everybody going for it. But then that ballot language really sunk it, because people walked into the ballot box, they saw what the ballot language said, which was very different than how we were talking about it, and people got confused. A lot of the people who voted no against Citizens Not Politicians thought that they were voting against gerrymandering, when in fact to really end gerrymandering in Ohio, they needed to vote yes. And so what I can say about all of this is it's like all other rights to vote, right? If it wasn't so powerful, we wouldn't have had to fight so hard to get it in the first place, and we wouldn't have to fight so hard to defend it now, right? But I will say that the whole message, especially on the 60-40 piece of this, just really talking about things in terms of it's not Republican versus Democrat. It is we the people against the politicians who are out of touch with us. And I think if you are really, you in Alabama are resisting making this partisan, because we had, there were a lot of Republicans and there were more Republicans who opposed, because right now Ohio is gerrymandered by Republicans. By the way, the League fought the Democrats when they did it in the 60s and 70s. And we fight Democrats in localities now that do it. We fight both ways. But because a lot of folks were listening to their party, right, it looks kind of partisan. But at the end of the day, if you can rise above, lots of Republicans defended the constitutional amendment process in Ohio, right? Don't make it about party, which League doesn't want to do anyway. Help your friends not make it about party. Make it about we, the people, making valuable change in our lives when a legislature is out of touch and will not do so. And I really am excited, and I hope you get this opportunity.
We do too. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. I guess I do agree. It's like when government works so hard to restrict our voice, then it just shows you just how powerful and important our voice is. And I want to turn and ask Sam, why does ACLU feel that this ballot amendment, citizen initiated ballot amendment process, what could it do to help Alabamians? Should just talk to that, and what's your aspirations for Alabama with this bill?
Yeah. So the thing, I don't want to be a dead horse here, but it gives the power back to the people. Again, it is about the people, just to Jen's point, that their voices are heard. And this bill just streamlines the process and the mechanism in order for that to happen. I think a lot of times we focus on just a lot of the nuances that are there, which we should, but what it really boils down to, and I'm a military guy, I'm in the National Guard, the bottom line up front, we focus on that bottom line, which is the people's voices are supposed to be heard within the democratic process. And bills like HB 14, bills like ballot initiatives allow that to happen. And that is what is at the forefront, I believe, of all the organizations that are represented here. Us being able to have the people's voices, regardless of what side of the aisle that they're on, no matter if they're Republican, Democrat, progressive, conservative, libertarian, independent, whomever, that your voice as a person who resides here within this state, within this nation, should be adhered to, and it should not be held up by politicians who are in the legislature right now. These are the people. The people should be represented, point blank, period. And so bills like this, again, allow that to happen and allow people to really be involved in the political process and not cause that apathy that so many people tend to feel, and understandably so, through the process, and feeling like their voices aren't heard. So that's why we are focused on having bills such as these really be presented and really find their way to becoming law, because the foundation of this nation is by the people and for the people, and keenly focused on for the people here. So yes, that's why we believe that this bill is absolutely necessary, and we're going to do all that we can in order to make sure that this bill has some traction. I mean, and I'm going to be honest, and just being honest here, it is going to be a process because of the makeup of the legislature. Alabama, and I believe many of the folks on this call know, we are in a super majority, and the party that's in majority would not like this bill to be passed. And that's just being honest. We're not playing, and I promise you, we're not playing up to the partisan leanings, these are just some things that you know and that you learn when you are at that state house. You learn what bills that they want. You learn what bills that they're looking to push to the side. And that's why, going back to my point from the question that we had earlier, that's why it's so important to apply that public pressure to bills such as these to get legislators to move. But in a nutshell, the bill is something that we definitely are supporting and we want to see go forward. And we're going to do all that we can in order to make sure that this piece of legislation and other similar pieces are able to move forward throughout Alabama's legislation. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sam. All right, I'm gonna ask one last question to everyone, and I'm really asking it for Alabama's sake, but I'd like to get your thoughts. And the question is really thinking about how, what is the impact of having, if we have this ability, civic and citizen ballot initiative, looking from in terms of cultural or civic engagement shifts, what can we expect over time through having this process on being able to have better voter engagement, accountability, public trust? I would just like to get everyone's perspectives on that. And I think the last time I don't know if I started with Cecile. I'm thinking I'm back to Jenn. But
No, you never started with me, but that's okay.
I'm going to start with Cecile. I'm going to start with Cecile.
Well, that's actually part of what we testified to, how important it was, an opportunity, our First Amendment rights and associational rights, freedom of speech, but the connection that you have with a voter. When you have their attention, the situation that we usually find ourselves in is we go to these heavily trafficked events, 4th of July, full day celebration, a big festival in the town, and people come to your table, League of Women Voters, and they want to know about the amendments. They've heard something, they want to get the information. You've got their attention for 5 to 10, 15 minutes or longer if they want to sit and talk with you, and you really get them excited. They say things like, and I've talked to people, I've collected thousands of petitions over the 10 years on the different things that we worked on. And they literally say things like, I am so glad you're here. I have a much better understanding. I'm going to research this a little more, but I'm going to sign to get it on the ballot. They are busy living their busy lives, and they're very grateful with a group like the League that they have confidence in. And we give both sides as, League members. That's what we do. They are so grateful for that communication, and you can tell they're going to vote. They're going to tell their neighbor, you might get an invitation. Can you come to my church? Can you come to this community center? I mean, it's like really great connective tissue and opening bridges. And so that it's not only are you educating them on that issue, you're stirring up their civic interest. So it's a very powerful double, triple whammy in terms of increasing the power of democracy.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Cecile. I'm going to go to Jenn now. Same question.
Well, I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for, but I would say some things that y'all could think about is one would be, we have a speakers bureau. And so just giving everybody, like training them up. I know you, and especially I know you've got a lot happening here and you're pushing, but training people up to go to Rotary clubs and church picnics or whatever with some slides and talk about what this is and why it matters and some of the common sense policies that other states have passed through this people action. Something else I would encourage, we did our press events. We had faith leaders, we had labor unions, we had leaders of all major and minor parties, all, so many different groups, business leaders all coming together with our flag, our US flags and our Ohio flags, and just really talking about how it was really all of us. It was the collective we, and that is defending and trying to use these ballot initiatives. I would think about letters to the editor and op-eds, especially op-eds from those business leaders. I think you'll find that some of the business leaders are really interested. And like Alabama, Ohio is a supermajority state because of gerrymandering, unfortunately, and it hurts my heart and soul. But there are always a lot of people. We had, former, especially when we were trying to defeat the 60-40 proposal, former Republican governors, former Republican AGs came to our aid and supported that. Citizens Not Politicians was led in part by a Republican Chief Justice who had retired. And so I would encourage you to think about how you can get to as many people as possible, to make it easy on them, and to really make visible the practical ways that the people could be joining together to make your lives better. And I think that, it might take more than one General Assembly. It might take more than one piece of legislation. But I think if you keep showing that that voters are your North Star, and that it is a big choir, a very diverse and big choir, I think it's a real opportunity.
Thank you. I appreciate the different steps that we can take to try to build a coalition. And David, I'm gonna hand it off to you next.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Samuel, for your service. Everybody's in the National Guard. They always think the military was the Southern thing again. One thing that our initiative and referendum amendment also applies to counties and cities. So even if you can't grab your state right now, do counties and cities and get people addicted to the process. I mean, we've done non-discrimination ordinances. We've eliminated cash bail. We've did ban styrofoam in cities and in counties and stuff. And so, even if you can't get it to begin with, let's say, well, let's just try it in like a cities. Let's just try it in the counties. And then people, like I said, they'll get addicted to this. It really is addictive. Arkansas, same as Ohio, they referred out the 60% rule in Arkansas, our General Assembly did, and it lost 70% to 30%. Then they came back the next time and tried to eliminate the cure period that we have and try to triple the number of counties, and it lost 70% to 30%. So they've stopped messing with direct democracy and referring amendments out about it as well. And I'm also with the nonpartisan thing is like, this last time we had a lot of laws that were passed, the ones that we sued. And when we did, the league is the plaintiff with some individuals, but I called the Republican state senator who voted against all of them and asked if he would be my plaintiff as well. So I have the Republican state senator and the League of Women Voters as the plaintiff in my lawsuits here. So it's kind of hard for them to say that we're not nonpartisan, because even the conservatives in Arkansas, the most conservative little news organization that we really have up here in Northwest Arkansas, it is for direct democracy, and they're just wearing them out. But so yeah.
Keeping it nonpartisan is definitely a superpower.
It is. Oh my gosh. Because I didn't pass the minimum wage with 70% without getting Republican vote. Not in Arkansas.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
80% of our General Assembly is Republican. So that just goes to show you.
Well, thank you. And so, Sam, do you want to answer that question too, as far as what do we think would happen in Alabama from a civic engagement perspective? If voter turnout, if we got the ballot amendment.
Yeah.
Initiated.
Yeah. Listen, within Alabama, and I'm 31, Alabama, when it comes to voter turnout, that is one of the biggest things that we really struggle with. And having bills such as HB 14 with the ballot initial is something that I believe will actually help drive voter turnout. I'll say this, back in 2022, during the midterm elections, our turnout percentage was 37.3% across the state. which is abysmal. That is a very low voter turnout percentage. So I think we will have to find ways in order to, unconventional ways in order to drive that turnout, because within Alabama, we have about 5 million people within the state, and 3.8 million are registered to vote. So the voting age population is not the problem. The turnout piece is the biggest. I'm stressing it's the biggest issue that we face. So bills like HB 14 will help in that process because it gets people more engaged, and we have to be engaged on all fronts. Bills such as HB 14, they are bills that historically Alabama has never had. Alabama has never had a ballot initiative to be placed upon, or to be amended here within the Constitution. People have never been able to voice their issue and how they feel in this way. We have had local ordinances that would seek to be implemented, but the ballot initiative portion for the state that was led by the charge of Governor Fob James back in the 90s, before I was even born, it was tried, but it was unsuccessful. And so as a young voter, I'd say, it is imperative that we reach people on all fronts and from all backgrounds of life, especially younger voters too. Younger voters need something that really drives them to the polls. And I think if they actually hear that there is legislation that allows their voices to be heard, if they get the number of signatures that they need, or if they are able to collect that money and raise the awareness and get these bills and get issues to be placed upon the ballot, that will drive them to really want to be engaged within the process. But again, and I keep going back to it because it's so pertinent to our conversation tonight, it is about us being able to drive that conversation to apply that pressure, because without it, people are not going to move. And that's why it takes us moving as a collective unit in order to make that happen. In this work and really throughout life, we all are ubiquitously linked in this process. And we all have to do our due diligence in order to make that happen. The more that we are aligned and the more that we are engaged in this work, the better chances that we have in order to make things move forward within the legislature and within the political sphere. So that's my recommendation. Yes, we need HB 14 and other bills like it. So yes.
Thank you, Sam. So we have time for a couple of questions, and then I'm gonna go around and just let everyone give just sort of their final, they want one final comment, advice, or whatever. And so, Sam, this question is for you, how many signatures are required in Alabama to get a ballot amendment, started on the petition?
To get started. Yeah, so just the amount of signatures themselves. Okay, so yes, so if you have at least 1,000 signatures from the way that the bill is written, then you're able to proceed along within the process. So that's right, specifically within HB 14, that is the baseline that you'll need in order to make that happen. But I think, and I believe it was Jenn who made the recommendation, get as many signatures as you can, because that allows you to really echo the voices of the people who really want to see things to be presented. So yes, bottom line,
1,000.
Have at least 1,000.
All right, Nick, I'm gonna shotgun these questions to you, and then will we have a safeguard for the 51% so that we don't end up at 60%?
I think that's a good question, and I don't want to, and I want to really parse this. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Kathy.
I was just going to say, no, I don't know if you can answer that, but is it?
Yeah.
I don't. The other thing is, can this process be used to repeal bad legislation?
100%. Yes. Yeah.
We got plenty. We got plenty of that.
Oh, you got a few. Okay. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. All right. And last one is that's 10%, but the 10% for Alabama is a requirement is that the requirement for Alabama is 10%?
So the requirement for constitutional amendments is 10%. But if you're moving forward and just trying to get something specific to be placed upon that, it'll be 7% for voters that they will need. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The last question is, I think they've been talking about Attorney General, but ours goes through the Secretary of State, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And that's a big difference, is we don't have, the Attorney General is not involved in our process at all, is it? Not officially.
No, it's correct. This goes directly to the Secretary of State and the office of Wes Allen, who serves as our Secretary of State. Yes.
For now. Yeah.
For now, we shall see.
He's term limited. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
All right. Okay. Well, I think right now we're almost at the end. We got a couple of more minutes, and I'm just going to go back around, and I'll go to Jenn first, and then I'm looking across at everybody. So Jenn, you go, take about a minute, we only got 2 minutes for everybody. But.
That's fine. Well, and my 2-year-old grandson just showed up, so he's making noise in the background. So I'll be fast. I just want to say that it's always an honor to be with all of you. This work is hard. It takes a long time, but we have suffrage in our roots, right? You know, the suffrage movement started in the anti-slavery conventions, right, in the 1830s, and we didn't get that right until 1920. If we got staying power, and I'm with you, Alabama, and I'm rooting for you, and I believe it'll eventually happen. So good luck with everything.
Thank you. David?
Sure. Good luck. Anything I can do to help, let me know. I'll drive to Alabama if you want me to come to Alabama and do something. Yeah, but don't give up.
It.
It's too important. I mean, seriously, this is just a big deal. And you know, it is a small minority that's going to be against it, because even the conservatives, once they get a taste of this, you know, when Arkansas had a Democratic General Assembly, the Republicans passed the same-sex marriage amendment. They passed single-parent adoption amendment. They passed no funding for abortions. They passed all that. And the smart Republicans will see that eventually it's going to change again. And so that's why the process is so important, you know? So whatever I can do to help, call.
Thank you, David. Cecile, words of wisdom?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that talking about that this is a good tool for people to have their voices heard, regardless of their party affiliation or conservative, liberal, that the tool is the same, because whenever people feel like their voices are blocked, there needs to be a way to get really good ideas before the citizens. And if they don't like the idea, they vote it down. You know, but I think that is hopefully will entice support for the long run and not just the quick hit. And then if you get it, preserve it, fight like cats and dogs to keep them from anybody from making it more difficult, putting those criminal and all those fines and things like that. Just protect it.
Thank you. Thank you, Cecile. All right, Sam.
All right. So the last thing, keep the fight. I know it's tough. We fight all the time to make sure that a sliver of light is there for the people, and just never stop. My one plug is that I would love for folks who are in Alabama to join us. We have a citizens lobbyist program where we educate folks on how to talk to legislators, how to get them to move, how to get them to act, contact them and really be engaged in the process. So join us, because we work better together and we have more in common than we do apart. So yes, join us, keep the fight, and let's make Alabama the great state, and to continue to make Alabama the great state that she is. So yeah, and I can send some information there about how to join. So
all right, if you guys send me, Sam, if you send that to me, I'll send out the video to everybody that registered. So anything you guys want to send me, I'll share. So I want to thank the panelists. This has been a really great conversation. I've learned a lot, and I've definitely enjoyed spending time with all of you. And thank you to everyone that's attended tonight. As we've learned, citizen ballot initiatives are needed because they restore the balance and they give power back to the people. When the government becomes non-responsive, unresponsive, they will increase civic engagement and participation, which is something we desperately need in Alabama. And the initiative process doesn't weaken representative government, it strengthens it. It reminds elected officials that ultimate authority rests with the people. And so if we believe in government of the people, by the people, and for the people, then we must also believe that the people deserve direct voice in their government. And that's what this bill would give us. And so I want to thank you all again. This has been a great conversation, and I think it's definitely given us food for thought and action. And good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Blessings. Have a good one.